What's up, folks? This is Mr. Walker coming at you with our next lesson, people. We are talking about the second part of our notes with sketching, notating, and drawing. So, last time we were talking about how these different symbols are going to be drawn on the paper or named on the paper. Okay. This time we're going to actually go through and do a little bit of drawing. So, we are looking at sketching versus drawing versus constructing. Okay. So, first off, what's a sketch? A sketch is a freehand drawing of a geometric figure with no tools, just using markings and symbols. So, some examples we got this right here. This is a line segment. This is an angle. When we go through and deal with this, you're not necessarily going through and worrying about drawing to scale. You're just looking to draw what you are trying to communicate. So over on that first one, I'm just communicating that this part of the segment and this part of the segment are the same. Or over here, I would be indicating that this angle is a right angle. This is just me drawing it without using any tools. So do I know, in fact, that these two are equal or this is 90? Not necessarily. We just gave our best drawing interpretation. All right. Now, when we go through and compare sketching to drawing, drawing is a little more, accurate. So we are accurately going to be creating these figures using tools with measures. So things like rulers or protractors. The last one that we got here is constructing, and we're going to get into this a little later in our unit. Constructing is when we accurately create geometric figures using tools with no measurements. So things like this are a compass. This right over here, you've probably gotten one of these in school supplies in the past and never used it really. But this year, we actually will be able to. So a compass is used for that, a straight edge. Patty paper, I think, is more, I think you probably might know that as tracing paper, that really light stuff that you put on top of something. So, again, a lot of different ways that we're going to be doing this. So, let's first talk about how we're going to use these tools to draw an angle. So, the tool that we're going to be using is a protractor. You've probably seen this in your supply crates at school, but a protractor has on the bottom this flat area and all around it these little markings that are going to help us make an angle. We're going to have to use these to practice with, so make sure you grab yourself one before you jump in. All right, so how do we use a protractor to draw an angle? First off, you're going to use the bottom part of this, the straight part, to draw a little segment. So we're going to draw sorry, not a segment, a ray, my fault. So we're going to use the bottom to draw ourselves a little ray. At the end point, we're going to align this with the circle or the very middle of the straight edge, okay? Or center. Now, depending on what type of angle you want to draw, you want to pay attention to a couple of things. Decide which set of numbers you're going to use to see whether your angle is going to be acute or obtuse. Acute angles are angles that are less than 90 but more than zero. Obtuse are any angle that is greater than 90. Okay? What you do, you're going to find that number that you want to make, and you're going to make a small tick mark at that number on the protractor. So I just made a little mark up here in between these two. And then I'll use the bottom of the protractor with the straight edge to connect the vertex, aka the endpoint, over to that tick mark that I made. And then I just made an angle. Now, this little bit of practice that we're going to do will involve you having a protractor and actually drawing this, okay? So keep that stuff in mind. Come back in a few and we're going to talk about it. Cool? Oh, cool. All right. Hopefully you went through and tried this out, okay? If you didn't get it done correctly, don't worry. It's probably your first time really going through and drawing this, okay? So I don't want you to have to worry about it. You're not going to become Da Vinci overnight. Let's go through and take a look at it. First one they want you to do is draw the measure of angle A if it is 107. Drawing that would mean that we would draw a ray going over to the side, and 107 is over here to the left side of this. Since this is going to be bigger than 90, you want to make sure that you got that little angle bigger than 90 like this. The other one is 82. 82 is going to be more scrunched up. So it's not necessarily wide like this. It'll be more narrow, a little to the right of 90. Okay? So that's what we got right here. Now, on the bottom here, I want you to mark the sketch with the given information. So one of the things they want is to mark that angle KML is congruent to NLM, segment KL is congruent to NM, segment OL is congruent to OM. Okay, so let's get our first one. We're talking about these two angles here, and those two angles are inside of that middle triangle. So I would just go through and make a little arc over those angles. Am I asking you to measure it? No, I'm just asking you to indicate that those two are congruent. And we did that by indicating it with those little arcs. Now, if we're talking about segments being congruent, just know we're going to use little hash marks on the side. So these two sides are congruent, as well as on the inside of this shape, these two. Please note, I use different sets of markings for these different sides so that I know that I'm talking about these two being congruent as opposed to this being congruent to that or that being congruent to this. You have to just make sure that you differentiate what type of markings you are going to be using. Okay, next one we're talking about is the measure of angle ABC being 90. That segment AB is congruent to CB, and that angle BAC is congruent to BCA. So, first one we got, talking about a 90-degree angle. 90-degree angles have this little box over on the side, like how we do here. Then we're talking about AB being congruent to BC. So I just used these little marks here. And then the last one, since we're talking about two angles being congruent, we put those little arcs right there. Okie dokie, folks. Make sure that you get this stuff into your book. Remember, it's going to be the same thing as we go through this unit. So small rectangles are going to be on the left, big rectangles on the right. I'm going to catch y'all guys in class. Hope y'all have a good day.